Hello, welcome to the TU Sports Extra podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined by TU beat writer John Tranchina. Normally, we'll be coming at you on Thursdays, but we're talking Friday this week, John, because we wanted to kind of get a day after the football game and a day before tomorrow's home basketball opener. So we'll talk about hoops in just a second. Let's kind of recap the loss at Memphis last night. I guess you could tell, John, in the post game last night, Montgomery, I wouldn't say that he was down, but you could certainly see he was a little disappointed, understandably so. And just, they're 3-7 at best, 5 wins. So another losing season after going to back-to-back bowls, no bowl game this year. I guess, John, just kind of tell us how we got here.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That was about the I guess saddest, the least upbeat that I've ever seen him was after last night's game. Yeah, I mean, the season really started out with a lot of promise. I would say, like, after 3 games, they were 2-1, and their one loss was an overtime game that they let a fourth quarter lead slip away. And at that point in the season, Davis Brin was leading the league and are leading the nation in passing. Keelan Stokes was third in receiving. This team looked like they were going places, and it was a fun team to watch. And I think the second quarter of the next game against Ole Miss is when Davis Brin first hurt his ankle, and it pretty much that changed the trajectory of this season right there. I feel like not having a healthy Davis Brin pretty much derailed this season. He hasn't been the same guy since. The offense hasn't been the same since. There's been he didn't miss a full game from that. He came back, but after that he could barely move around for a couple of weeks, and then he kind of got himself back to going, and he things picked up a little bit offensively, and then he got hurt again, and then the last 2 games have been Tulsa's worst offensive output of the season, and then worse than that, the next game last night's against Memphis was their lowest offensive output. So I feel like it all traces back to that moment when he got hurt. I don't know what to say about that, because it's not like it's understandable. Most of it was his performance. It's understandable if he's not 100%, but he wants to fight through it, and they want to have him in there. And he probably, even at the lower percentage that he's probably still was better option than his backup, Braylon Braxton, who came in and had moments of success himself, but he was no Davis Brin, or no healthy Davis Brin. And, that led us to last night, where Brin looked like he wasn't fully healthy, and then actually wasn't being very effective. And then Braxton came in and took over for him, and he didn't do much better either. So I feel like that's mainly the story of the season, was how he went, because the defense held pretty much, played well all season and looked good yesterday. It's just they didn't really get a whole lot of offensive help, and the offense kind of slid all season without Brin at his best.
Did he look kind of hurt last night when he got pulled? I mean, as a viewer watching, did he not look himself to you?
Well, it's interesting, because his injury was to his non-throwing shoulder. So honestly, it didn't really seem like it was affecting his play, but it must have been, because he was not as this. I mean, maybe it didn't physically affect his play, but he did a couple of double clutches without throwing the ball before, while he was in there, and a couple, one time again, he threw it at one point where he was getting hit and altered the path of the ball. He threw an interception, I think, when and that may be the other story of this season. The inexperienced offensive line that came in. We entered the season with 0 starts on the offensive line, and they had their moments and stretches where they were pretty good, but they were not able to protect him enough. And maybe defenses changed their tactics once they realized he was hurt and started blitzing more or whatever, and that they couldn't handle it. But the sack numbers went up dramatically after the Ole Miss game, interestingly enough, and Davis was just not able to handle the pressure. He did not do nearly as well. Even when he was supposedly healthy, he did not do nearly as well under that pressure than he did before that. So that's another key.
Do you have a feel who's going to play quarterback next Friday when South Florida comes to town? That game is on a Friday night,
Yes.
by 8 o'clock. It's an ESPN game. So Friday night next week. Who do you see playing quarterback in that game, or do we know yet?
Yeah, we don't know yet. I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's going to be Bryn again. I feel like he's and kind of having a sense of how Montgomery handles these things. I feel like he's going to give him another shot. While his performance wasn't great last night against Memphis, if Braxton had gone in and lit it up and threw 4 touchdowns and 300 yards, this would be a different conversation. But he wasn't really any better. And I think, everybody still kind of acknowledges that Bryn maybe isn't fully healthy anyway. So I feel like as long as he didn't suffer any physical issues from last night, which it didn't sound like he did, because Montgomery did make it clear that when he came out, it was not because of any aggravating injury or anything. So okay. I feel like it'll be Bryn.
Okay. Let's talk about basketball for a second. Home opener tomorrow, 2 o'clock, Reynolds Center, Jackson State coming to town. TU's 0-1 on the season. It's only been one game. But what do you think of Eric Konkel's bunch so far?
Yeah, well, I'm optimistic. I mean, this team has excited me from the beginning, just about kind of a new direction, a fresh new approach. A philosophy there. They want to focus on defense and being hardworking group, and I'm very much interested in that. I feel like and we saw a lot of glimpses of good stuff the other night in their 73-70 loss to Oregon State, but where they had a big lead, they jumped out to a big lead and did a lot of good things, and then kind of let it slip away. And part of the reason that happened was because Oregon State shot 62% in the second half, which was just ridiculous. That is not likely to happen in going forward with other opponents, I would think. It gave them, but we got a good glimpse of what this team can do. We saw some really good things from a lot of different players. It's still a new group learning his system. It's still a new group learning to blend together. It's guys who have not usually, who maybe aren't used to the kind of important roles that they're playing. So everybody's still learning and getting used to it. And I thought it was kind of interesting that they played a Power 5 opponent in their first game as opposed to a lower level opponent from a lower league. I thought that was kind of a cool idea to really get a sense of where they're at already. And that's kind of what Coach Konkel said. He was like, we could have put this game at any point in the season, but we thought, why not put it out there now and just get a feel for where we're at, and then we get a sense of what they need to work on in the next few games.
Good deal. John, I want to remind our listeners about our Maggie Roller interview from last week. She was kind enough to come on and share her memories of TU golfing legend Dale McNamara. Maggie played for Dale, obviously, back in the day, and they've remained close. And her daughter, Jenny, who's now at TU, her and Dale were close. And so if you haven't listened to that interview, Maggie was great. So we encourage you to go in the archives and check that out. That was yeah. Anyway, so
it was great. And warning, it's a little emotional.
A little bit. So yeah. So if you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to check it out. Maggie had some great things to share. So John, unless anything else is on your mind, why don't we leave it there for this week, and we'll talk again next week. We'll probably go back to Thursday next week on our
Yeah,
chat.
Sounds
And
good.
We'll talk a little more. We'll talk Jackson State basketball, and we'll continue to talk some football. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thank you.